Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass. Thank you for watching this Ag Forecast, brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Well, as we get started with this forecast, let's kind of take a look at the conditions early on Monday morning, because they're going to be a major influence on how the weather patterns are going to shape up throughout the rest of the week. We can start off west. Basically, in the upper levels of the atmosphere, there's a deep trough kind of extending here off the west coast of the U.S. and Canada, and that circulation is extending all the way down to the surface where you see this tightly wound low pressure center. And what that's going to do is that's going to feed moisture into the far northern parts of the Pacific Northwest, really hitting parts of northern Oregon and then getting into the state of Washington. Some of that precip at the beginning of the week is going to get into the mountains of Idaho and Montana, which is good. We need more snowpack in those mountains, so this could be a beneficial feature, at least to start off the week. On the other side of this deeper upper level trough, there's a ridge that's building right here across this, kind of the western United States, and we have winds that are kind of coming from the south and east that are running right along the front range of the Rocky Mountains. And that's going to be transporting quite a bit of warm air up into this area for this time of year, but we also have some issues with some extremely windy conditions over here as well. Now that ridge kind of transitions into a broader trough that's come over the eastern half of the country. We can see a cold front slid through on Sunday. We have much cooler air coming through the eastern part of the Corn Belt. There's a little weak low pressure system that's kind of moving right in through the Great Lakes here that's going to be causing some issue Monday on in terms of some snow shower activity and maybe some really, really slick roads due to the circulation around that low. And then, of course, off of the east, we have our low pressure system that we were watching at the end of the week that basically soaked this part of the country, and it's kind of moving on off to the northeast. So we got a lot that's going on right now. So what I want to do first is I want to show you the precip, at least getting you through the middle of the week. So again, if we just look out west, let's watch this again in animation here. You can see we have all that onshore flow here, kind of bringing quite a bit of precipitation into parts of Washington, and getting over here into Idaho and parts of the higher country here in Montana. Let's come back and watch it again here around the Great Lakes, though. We see that system kind of coming through, and you saw basically the showers, the snow showers that were associated with this that really get going, by the time we get into early Monday morning, kind of getting through midday Monday, possibly causing some issues here. We saw the middle part of the country staying relatively dry. We also saw our low kind of racing up the east coast here. Let's watch it one more time kind of from the beginning, just so you can watch it again. So this is the feature we're watching for the Corn Belt, one exiting here off the east coast and some onshore flow up here in the northwest. So that's kind of the bigger picture things we have to be paying attention to. Now, just to kind of show you what the snowfall totals are looking like, I'm just going to show you the NAM model. I'll just kind of get an idea here. What we do see is some bigger mountain snows out west, which is good. But really what we're going to be paying attention to is the lighter snowfall accumulations here at the beginning of the week coming through the eastern part of the Corn Belt. So again, that's really the only big player we've got, at least getting us through the middle of this week. Now we got to check in on the pattern. There's a lot of things influencing this this overall pattern. We had pretty cold air kind of stacked up in Canada, ready to slide south. We'll talk about that in a moment here. We have kind of a global circulation pattern. We'll look at that at the end of this video. In the tropics, it's really kind of promoting a cooler pattern across the eastern U.S., and we've really seen a shift overall in the forecast over the last 10 days or so in what we're expecting to see out of this ridge, really kind of pushing that colder air farther to the east. The models didn't pick up on that real well in my last two videos, and so we're kind of now seeing the evolution of that as we move forward. So let's kind of see what we have to take on here. So here's Monday. There's that deep upper level low, kind of pumping that moisture in out west. See the ridge out here? That's the thing we got to be paying attention to. How strong does this get? Broader trough here over the east, that's the cooler air that's in place over the east and causing some trouble here in the Ohio River Valley with some snow. As we kind of move through time, what we do see is that ridge will push east to the beginning of the week, so we will see some moderation in temperature, but an upper level low will kind of move through the Canadian-U.S. border, and as it does so, as it moves right in through here, we will get this little system that goes racing across here, basically coming out of Alberta and going across the northern tier states. But the thing we want to see is what does the pattern really settle into? And what we tend to see here with both the operational GFS and all of the GFS ensemble is this really well-defined ridge that kind of takes shape here over the west. And that's important because if that sets up, we tend to go back into that pattern we've had where a deep upper level trough, I mean, look, it goes off my color bar, kind of sits over here with the Hudson Bay. We'll have to be watching clipper systems come around this again and again and again. So that's the flow pattern you get with something like this. But this does mean kind of a return to some colder temperatures into this part of the country as we get into into the month of February. And again, we've been talking about that return of the cold, but it's been more about what the overall pattern's been suggesting in terms of its longevity. And that's, I think, where the biggest questions lie for a lot of meteorologists right now. Just to show you what that cold air looks like, you can watch it in animation here, but I'll step through it so you can kind of see what we're talking about. As we get into, here we go, and this is Monday evening, we can see the cooler air behind that first trough. Look at the warmth building out west as the ridge kind of comes in out there. And what we see here is that warmth translates to the east as that ridge kind of moves in this direction, and we do get a warm up through midweek, but behind it, as that upper level trough kind of takes place here, like I said, along the U.S.-Canadian border, we will start to see our first kind of shot at some colder air coming in toward the end of the week. So there it is. That's the cold push behind that first one. And what we do see is we're going to see the atmosphere kind of reload here as that deeper upper level trough takes shape over here over the Hudson, and a ridge really amplifies up toward the west coast of Canada and Alaska. And watch the cold air kind of come pouring in as the operational GFS was picking up here on just the day after Groundhog's Day, moving in. And what all that means, if you kind of see that overall flow pattern, is this. I just animated for you 10 days of precip by the GFS. Let's take a look at it kind of in bite-sized chunks here. So there's the wet weather moving up the east coast. You'll just see the west kind of getting the onshore flow out here. We can see the snow showers going through parts of the eastern Corn Belt. What we do see after this, though, is, check it out, as that upper level low kicks off this this little low pressure system, high pressure sits over here over the southeast, and what that means is we get this return flow of some warmer air that kind of comes into the middle part of the Corn Belt. But overall, it's not really that wet of a pattern. What you will notice is that by the time we get toward the end of the week, the tail end of that upper level system does bring precip through this part of the country heading toward the southeast. What we have to be watching for now is that cold air. So remember, this about the time, just the day after Groundhog's Day, that the cold air starts to make its return toward the central states. And as it does, it looks like along the leading edge of it, we could have a chance here of bringing in some snow. We also see a system kind of coming here out of the Gulf of Mexico, but this is getting us out about a week, and so there's some issues with the timing of this and the overall evolution, but that's kind of at least our 7-day outlook in terms of precipitation. So this could mean that when that cold air does come in, so look at how big that high pressure center is there. As it comes in along the leading edge, we could get some possible snow showers out of this system, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that as well. But overall, when you look at the next 10 days in terms of precip, we just see that the current system keeps the southeast wet, so that's the one that's exiting right now. A lot of this precip you see here in the Ohio River Valley, that's coming in the next couple of days. We do see a little stripe here coming in. This is again the precip that's coming in on that cold air after the 2nd and 3rd of February. We see our mountain kind of snows up here and some onshore flow. But look at this. Boy, does it stay dry here in the southwest where that ridge builds in. And we have drought building into this area, and so it's quite important to see this. I mean, we should be in California's wet season, and it's been exceptionally dry. And just to show you, there's some pretty strong model agreement with all of this. This is the ECMWF's 10-day outlook from Sunday, and we can see a very similar overall pattern with this systems, the next few systems that come through. Now, just to remind you, where we've been dry and where we've been wet, look at how dry it's still very dry here. And again, we're in this mode right now where I'm watching this closely, and this is just something to be considering as a potential issue getting into our next planting season if, and it's a big if the spring rains don't come through and alleviate some of the drought we see in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Some locations in here have not seen precip since October. We've stressed that a few times now. But overall, outside of that, unless you're in the southwest, we've had halfway decent winter in terms of precipitation overall. Now let's take a look moving forward. This is just a new map I'm generating just to kind of give me a better picture on where the big precipitation anomalies are across the world. And what I really want to stress now is what's going on in South America. So you can see my model's picked up on, not my model, but the GFS, my map is picked up on a big bias toward really wet conditions down here in Brazil's main growing region. So this is Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, Tocantins, this area. Wow, look at this. That same monsoonal flow really misses southern Brazil, really misses Argentina. This is a big dry bias for Argentina, kind of at the wrong time. I've recently seen some reports of people that are down there doing some field scouting, and so far I've not heard anybody come back and say, wow, we found some really great looking beans that are due to perfectly timed precipitation. So we're seeing some stresses, and we've been talking about it for quite some time now. So this is the bigger picture. This is a dry bias in the south and very wet in the north. And the long-range European model has done a pretty good job picking up on this. We've been talking about it now for a little bit. But look at how wet the bias is over the next 10 days. So got to remember, this is harvest time. So if that wet bias comes in right now, these are some pretty big delays as we move toward harvest. But look at how dry it is to the south, where the monsoonal flow kind of neglects this area. This is cause for concern, because as we move through the month of February, if we're not getting regular rain down there, that's a crucial time period for soybean growth and soybean maturity. So we've got to keep a very close eye on this. This is a signal of stress in Argentina's major growing regions. Now, I've been getting some questions, and I want to dig a little deeper for you. Sometimes I kind of steer away from digging too deep in all of this, just to kind of keep it at the right level for most people that want to watch. But I'm going to show you something kind of neat. You've probably heard a lot of meteorologists talking about this thing called the Madden-Julian oscillation. It's a really cool thing. Basically, it's a tropical flow pattern where we look where there's strong upper level support for rising motion and sinking motion. And all you really want to care about is what phase the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, is in. And it's been spending quite a bit of time here in 4 and 5, so these two phases, and it's moving toward phases 6 and 7. Now, why do we care about that? Well, if we kind of look at the longer range forecasts at where the Madden-Julian oscillation is going to go, we can look at historical correlations between that flow pattern and what it does in terms of precipitation, and that's what we're doing here. So remember, we had been talking about how the northern growing regions in Brazil had a nice dry time period. Remember that? Well, that's because when the MJO was spending time in phase 5, we tend to have a bit of a dry bias in that same area. So the Brazilian monsoon links up very well with the MJO, and also is timed right now very well with the weak La Nina. So all that kind of put together to give us that phase 5 dryness. But as we move toward phase 8, look at this. No wonder the models are picking up on all that wet weather. Phase 8 is a very wet pattern for Brazil's growing regions. So this all makes a lot of sense when you put together all of the flow of the atmosphere to kind of give you that picture. So I just wanted to give you a little bit deeper explanation of what was going on there, and I hope you found it kind of interesting and useful. So bigger impact is this is going to be a negative for the harvest time period there in Brazil, and also a negative with respect to that drier conditions down in Argentina, which this is just kind of a continuation of an ongoing story we've had so far for most of their growing season. So a lot to digest there, but I wanted to kind of give it all to you. Hope you found it useful. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast coming out on Thursday. To get morning farm report for your operations, with a daily email that shows you a snapshot of your field conditions each morning, go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for a free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield program or for growers who work with 80 merchandisers. Look forward to talking again on Thursday.